Welcome to Cancer Talks, a podcast sharing stories of personal transformation and collective healing from people who have been touched by cancer. My name is Claire, and I'll be guiding today's conversation. If you're listening on an iPhone, click the plus sign in the upper right corner to follow our show and get notified when a new episode is released. My guests today are Claire Jones and Amaranthia Sepia. Claire is a domestic violence and cancer survivor, Buddhist, Francis Perkins Scholar, and Mount Holyoke graduate. Her work has been published by Goalcast, Best Self Media, and YOPP. In 2020, she spoke virtually to domestic violence activists at the YWCA Central Mass. Amaranthia is a Black, invisibly disabled creative activist. She's coordinated BLM Gallery, This is a Movement, Not a Moment, and features in Painted Brains' Discovering a Place for Us, as well as UVA's Invisible Disabilities. Together, Claire and Amaranthia co-founded Sista Creatives Rising and Art and Mind, which showcases creative folk who are underrepresented women and marginalized genders. Hello, Claire. Hello, Amaranthia. Welcome to Cancer Talks.
Hey, Claire. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to this first episode with two guests, and not any two guests, but both of you who have so many different kinds of relationship with each other. An intertwined life. Do you want to start with a little intro about yourselves?
Yeah. Okay, I'm Claire. I am 60 years old, Black female, she, her, and I'm wearing a denim jacket with a dark navy scarf, my red large glasses with gold chain attached, and I have silver hair. Wait, is this a video podcast as well, or?
Well, it's not on video. We're just going to be sharing the audio, but it's kind of a nice opportunity to share with the audience what you just did, which is a really beautiful accessibility practice that maybe some people aren't familiar with. Does anyone want to describe what just happened?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. Sista Creatives Rising, which is our little project that we are doing. We just started it it actually started in 2021, but we actually really got into it about the beginning of this year. And what we do is, because we're disabled, visibly and physically. I'm physically and visibly. Amaranthia is invisibly disabled. And what we try to do with our platform is to create accessibility and visibility for creatives, marginalized women, and marginalized genders to have accessibility in the arts. And so everything we do is based around accessibility. So whenever me introducing myself like that, it's for people who might be, short-sighted,
or blind, or
colorblind. And so every time you introduce yourself, you do something like that, because you're not only able-bodied people view or listen to podcasts. So we always keep that in mind because of our lives, and we also want to make it practice so other people will do it as well, because it really is a platform out there for people who have disabilities, and a lot of them are not able to leave home or whatever, and they get their info, or they get their content from online. So it's an accessibility tool.
And I love how integrated it is with your intro and the way that it made its way into this audio recording, because nobody gets to see any of our guests, whether they're blind or not. But now we get to have a little description of what you look like.
Yeah. It's called a self-ID. So I'll do mine quick. Yeah, I'm Amaranthia, and I'm Claire's daughter. Pronouns she, her. I'm 23 years old, and I'm just wearing a blue denim jacket with kind of a comic print on it, and it's got like red and white and black comic panels and stuff on it, and just a t-shirt. It's kind of like a light yellow, kind of tan, and it's got like a tiger design on it that's yellow and blue and pink, just bright colors. And yeah,
You have long dreadlocks?
I have, yeah, I have long black locks and wearing black rimmed glasses, and I have my hair kind of pulled to the side, and my locks have like little beads and little trinkets,
and silver trinkets, and butterflies, and you're she her.
Yep. Yeah.
There you go. That's it.
You look so good together. There's this Claire's red glasses, Amaranthia's red jacket.
We always try to funk it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I want to jump in, and a lot of the questions I think I'm going to ask each of you sort of separately, and maybe your answers intertwine, but I want to hear a little bit from each of you about your childhood. Maybe we start chronologically. Your childhood came first.
Yeah, I came first.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Barbados. I was born into and raised under domestic violence. And so from very young, that was my first introduction to the world. So the first time that I learned that there were problems between my mom and dad, the earliest memory I have was when I was like 4 years old. And I remember being at a relative's house. For some reason, my dad had kicked us out, and my mom had gone to a relative's house, and we were sleeping on the floor, and I heard a lot. I woke up to a darkened room with candlelight, and I think a kerosene lamp burning, and the smell of kerosene, and I heard this noise outside, and my mom screaming, and it was my dad. He'd come back to get her, and he was beating her outside, and I was 4 years old, and that made an imprint on my life. And it was very scary, but at the same time, in the midst of all that, there was this light from the candle in this darkened room. And that became a metaphor for my life, because as I got older and the violence became worse, there was always that violence and the fighting and the carrying on and spilling out into the communities that we moved into. But there was always this calmness at the center of my life. That was very strange. I never understood it. But as time went on and the family broke up eventually, in and back and forth, and by my 12th, 13th year, it really splintered. And my brother was put out on the street and at 12. And it just really, I dropped out of school by the time I was 15, and everything went off the rails. And I started to write. I was writing, and I found that writing was a source of healing for me from very young. And I promised myself that one day I was going to get off that island, and I was going to become a well-known writer, and I was going to free my mom. It's just something I said because I'd done a lot of reading, and I saw a lot of people overseas and in America that were doing well and stuff, and I wanted that life. I found my way off the island. I eventually got to come off the island. Someone sponsored me to Canada as a housekeeper, babysitter. That didn't work out. I came over to the US. I had a visa, and I overstayed that visa, and I was pretty much invisible for a long time. And then I found Buddhism. Before finding Buddhism, I almost was trying to commit suicide because I was like, my life was a mess. Couldn't function, couldn't find my way out. And Buddhism actually saved my life. I found it in a dark and subway. And one of the elders in Buddhism told me that I needed to take responsibility for my life. Basically, no one was going to save me but me. And through that, she told me that I had to go back and fix everything. By overstaying my visa, I had created problems for myself, and life was never going to work out working from that. So I found the courage, and with the help of people in the US, and I went back, and with help of people in Barbados, I somehow made it. It took a long time, but I was able to explain my situation. And with the help of people in Barbados, I came back, and I got my student visa, and I came back. And I took my SATs and GED before I had gone back to Barbados, while I was still living in the invisible life. I had done that. So I came back, and I still had this dream that I wanted to be a writer. and I made it to college, made it to a college, my first college in California, Pennsylvania. Then someone saw me doing the work there, the performing my poetry and writing and stuff. They told me about Francis Perkins' program in Massachusetts. I applied, I got in, full scholarship, international scholarship. And there it started. I realized that dream of wanting to be this writer came back.
Wow.
And so I decided to tell my story through my undergraduate program. And I designed a special major called Caribbean Women's Studies as expressed through the creative arts. And I started to tell my story. And that took me into research about finding out about the slave trade. And it took me on a trip to Senegal, where I went to Gorée Island off the coast of Senegal and went to the slave houses and stood at the door, no return, where some of the slaves were sent off their journey to the Caribbean and Americas. And it was there at that door that I realized that this thing called intergenerational trauma that had been passed down to me. It wasn't just my father I had carried anger to him a long time, and I realized that that anger that I had was inside it wasn't his fault. He was part of the system, the bigger system that had caused this schism when the slaves went over to the Caribbean and Americas. And so the violence that he visited upon me was something because he felt ineffective. He felt helpless. Yeah. And so from there, I came back and I did my undergraduate, wrote a play, and in that play, I told my story. And it was there that I graduated, and then I had Amaranthia, and then I had Amaranthia. I never felt I could be a good mother because of my background. But then I realized I had the opportunity with Amaranthia, with Buddhism informing my life again, to be a better person. And so I raised Amaranthia with that art and underlying everything. And so by the time she got to be in high school, we went through a number of different situations. We lived in Japan and we came back. We finally ended up in New Hampshire. And then Amaranthia's story began from there. But it was, this underlying thing of where we are right now with creating Sista Creatives Rising came from that journey. And so then Amaranthia could start her journey.
Yeah. So we lived in Japan between 2004 and 2006. So it was about 2.5 years. And before then we lived in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. We lived in Massachusetts.
No, we lived in Massachusetts, and then we lived in Connecticut, and we went to Japan. And so my dad got an expat job there, and so I went to international preschool and kindergarten. I went to a school called Mishimashi International for kindergarten, and it was a major influence on my life because we practice Japanese Buddhism, and so being there and being able to practice there and be immersed in the culture and where it came from, or Buddhist practice came from, and the influence of Shintoism as well was like a big influence on my art.
And you were like six years old?
Yeah, 4 to 6.
Yeah. Do you remember it?
Oh yeah, I remember a lot of things that even my parents don't remember. It was just it just imprinted on me so heavily. And before that, when I was in America, I was getting, I don't know if it wasn't really bullying because I wasn't in school yet, but I was dealing with a lot of racism where kids just didn't want to play with me. They wouldn't want to look at me. Yeah. They were mean to me. And so I was always excluded. And then when I went to Japan, I was in this diverse culture because it was international. So like I was around kids from around the world, and I was really accepted, and there wasn't rejection because of how I looked. And so
only for the Americans.
It was only the Americans who gave me a problem.
White Americans.
Only the white Americans. Yeah, it was very clear, and they always gave our family a massive problem to the point where it was hard for us we couldn't even join the American expat club.
Yeah.
So we was hung out with the other.
They didn't accept you.
Yeah, they wouldn't accept us into those spaces. So it was very blatant. So and we were the only African American family that came over, I believe, right?
Yes, there were 10 people. There were 10 people that were given this opportunity, and my husband and our family was the only Black family.
Yeah, so it was rough in that sense, dealing with that. But other than that, it was a wonderful experience. And so the art and mythology and video game culture was a major influence on me. And then when the crash hit, it was like the 2008 crash, but we were feeling it in 2006.
Yeah.
And we had to come back to America, and we went to Connecticut, in Canton, Connecticut. And so I went from this private school experience to suddenly being in this white suburban area, going to public school. And it was very traumatizing because I had reverse culture shock, because that was my first experience with this Japanese international foundation. And so I had to relearn everything, including like
money,
learning how to use American money. How my mom's accent heavily influenced how I spoke and how I wrote. So like I had issues in school with that. And then I was just dealing with racism from students and teachers. I was being immediately run into hearing slurs for the first time, hearing things like the N-word for the first time. And so I had to learn all this stuff about American culture and kind of how to assimilate, while at the same time dealing with a lot of issues too, because we're Buddhists, not Christians. So I was just dealing with so many different things left and right without knowing I had invisible disabilities at the time. So I was started getting really sick. My dad was experiencing extreme discrimination when he came back to America as well. And so he lost the job, and we had to ultimately move to New Hampshire. And that's when things started getting worse, because we didn't know that New Hampshire was less than 2% Black. So we came here, and everything was worse. And my dad, this was 2008 at this point, and my dad he got a management job, and the people told him, "We've never worked with a Black manager. We don't listen to y'all." And they just wouldn't work with him. And so that's kind of like what he's been running into on and off since that time. And so that caused a lot of hardship for our family. And then the bullying kept getting worse, more slurs, more just discrimination in general. And it got to a boiling point where I was like, I didn't have any friends because
immunity crashed.
My immunity crashed, and my only friend was my art. So my mom saw that my art was helping me, and she talked to my art teacher, who learned about my story, and he was like, "We need to make an art show out of this." And so he went and created the first art show that the elementary school had. And from there, that was like my foundation of like, wow, I could use my art to help people, because it really changed my life, because all these kids that wouldn't talk to me were like suddenly talking to me, and they're like, "Oh my God, I love your art. Can you teach me?" This really inspired me. And so I took that with me, and when I got into middle school, got even worse. I started standing up for myself, and I got tired of just being quiet and being the shy kid. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I had to leave, because the bullying got so bad. I had this anti-bullying project that was supposed to kind of tour and go to different schools, telling my story and helping kids tell their story. And because I was talking about race, they got very uncomfortable with it. And so ultimately I was kind of pushed out by the teachers and students, and it got really bad. So at that point, I realized I was developing the symptoms of complex PTSD without understanding that, and panic disorder. And I just was getting panic attacks and getting very sick. And so from 13 or 14 to 18, I was homeschooled online. The school had to pay us to help me get my computer because it was so bad. And my doctor advocated for me. She basically saved my life, Dr. Amanda. And from there, I kept using my art to heal. And my mom took my story, and we found an art student at the school I went to called Kimball Jenkins. It was an art school that I got full scholarship at. And I was doing adult classes, and I met this student who was like, "You need to take your story and do something with this." So we took that anti-bullying project, turned it into a tour, an art tour. It was going and having different shows at different libraries in different towns. And it was called "Do You Know Who I Am?" or "I'm Proud of Who I Am." The first project was called "Do You Know Who I Am?" So when I went and became homeschooled and I did this tour, it was called I'm Proud of Who I Am. And from there, it was still difficult, and still is now, with the community, because I feel like a lot of things have gotten worse with race, even though there's a little bit more diversity here than there used to, but it's very, very little. But overall, I just kept creating my art, kept drawing, kept doing this work around advocacy. And once I finally got my proper diagnosis at like age 21.
Yeah, you had to go on SSI.
And I went on SSI at age 19 because I had the diagnosis, but it wasn't like accurate. So it really took me until I was 21 to get the proper diagnosis. But since then,
and we have the same diagnosis
of PPS. We have the same diagnosis of complex PTSD and panic disorder and agoraphobia. And pretty much stemming from racial trauma. So we've been using our story, using our art and the relationship we have, because we really supported each other this whole time through all this to talk about disability, specifically invisible disability, accessibility, race, and gender, and how we can use art to heal, to advocate for ourselves, to heal ourselves. And so that's pretty much saved my life time and time again. Been a rough journey, but I'm proud of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with where I'm at despite all of it.
And we found community, but through virtual.
Yeah.
Because of our health issues and stuff, and because of COVID, all of our work is done virtually from our couch, and it's just really amazing to real COVID actually helped us to find our selves. Because
there was a whole world of people.
The whole world opened up, to us. And
it helped us get the right therapist. It helped us get the right advocate for ourselves and be like, you know what, no more being, quiet, being shy.
No more quiet, being shy and thinking that our voice
doesn't matter.
We've decided with Sista Creatives Rising through our platform, we're going to raise our voice and we're going to talk about the things and we're going to advocate for the things that impact our lives. And we know that impact the lives of women and
femmes and,
LGBTQ, marginalized people. So we're going to speak up and we're not going to be quiet. And if we don't get support, we'll keep going.
Yeah.
And that's what we do, basically.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about how the virtual community shows up for you and how it interacts with your agoraphobia, or like how does that feel connecting through the computer?
Yeah, it's been life-saving because honestly, after the bullying and I became homeschooled online, there wasn't really much of an online community for me. A lot of the kids were bullied as well. I went to this program called Relax, and a lot of the kids were ill or disabled or bullied, so I didn't really have my community there. And then so when I would go to my art school, Kimball Jenkins, I would go do stuff in person there, and I couldn't connect with the kids. I was running into the same problem. So when COVID,
and whenever you came back home, we found that it took a lot to recover.
Yes,
it's a lot of energy.
It found a lot. It took a lot of time to recover, and I was always getting some kind of trauma response or anxiety attacks or sometimes panic attacks because of what I was experiencing. And it took me a very long time to realize it was agoraphobia. I found out myself, because I didn't have the right therapist for a long time. And so when I found my new therapist at 21, she was like, you have panic disorder and agoraphobia is paired with that, and that's what's happening. So when COVID hit, I was like, there's something wrong. I know that I have this issue, and I was really upset because I was like, had these opportunities for in-person art shows, and they all went away. And I just started advocating, be like, I have to figure out how to do these things virtually. And so I started just doing these virtual art events instead. And it really helped me find people. And obviously, I wasn't always finding the right people immediately. It took a long time because it was just trying to navigate this kind of new world of like how interacting with people through Zoom and things like that.
How do you read people? Or
right.
Like, the signals are different.
Exactly. Exactly. And it was really amazing though, because I was able to start meeting people, artists of color, other advocates, people with disabilities that had the same disabilities as me. And I can't find that here in New Hampshire. I've always dealt with pretty blatant ableism here, where if I talk about my experiences, I'm just immediately shut down or people get uncomfortable. But when I went online, all of a sudden I'm like being embraced by other people who are going through the same thing. And they're like, oh, I have this too. Or, I know someone who has this. And so I have understanding of what you're going through. And it was just finding more empathy and understanding that I was not running into at all here. And it really helped me be like, okay, it's okay to tell my story. It's okay to share what's going on. And because people do care. And with in person, I just didn't feel like anyone really cared besides my doctors. So it was very frustrating for most of my life. And I feel like at this point now where we're at with Sista Creatives and really just out there telling our stories, doing podcasts and stuff, we're like, wow, we didn't know there were even more people that we could connect with. And now we're part of these communities and groups, and we're finding workshops like the workshops you hold where we're meeting others who take disability and accessibility and race and gender and all of these issues,
intersectionality,
very seriously, and understand that it's important. So I don't know, it's been very interesting journey, but it's been life-saving. I feel like.
And it doesn't mean that it's not an uphill battle. It's still an uphill battle because the forces of ableism are out there everywhere. And you have to fight against that. But I mean, this is the way how we have learned to thrive and to live. I always look at it like the lotus flower in the muddy water, you know. I always look at my life like that. I'm a lotus flower. I'm sitting. The mud is all the crap that is around that causes such injustice and such disharmony. And my life, I had to fight a lot. As you know, my journey. I told you coming from domestic violence and all the after effects of that. I had to learn about all these things that were blocking me and on to reveal my true self. I hid a lot, you know, and I didn't even know. I've traveled. I've gone to England. I've gone to Canada. I've gone to Japan. I've gone to Africa. I've traveled in the USA, but I never knew that I had agoraphobia. But my agoraphobia presents itself in different ways. Like if I get triggered by something, I would go into my room and I would hide. Sometimes people couldn't find me. I did it in college. I would disappear. And it's only at 59 years old that I got that diagnosis that it made sense that, wow, people see me and they see this person who's functioning and you know, does all these things. And it seems to them like I can get up and I can talk and I can present, but they didn't know that a lot of times I was hiding. And for me to present myself at school was such a major crisis for me that I would go back to my room and I would crash. No one would see that. So I used my middle name, Claire, and I declared my life as Claire, which is my middle name. My other names are from where I look at it as where I carried all the trauma. And then I decided I was going to use the name Claire because it means bright, and it gives me an opportunity to present myself, the true self to the world. That this person that you see today is the person that was hidden all these years, the person that you thought you met and you thought you knew who was so dysfunctional and hurt a lot of people because of maybe my toxic behavior or because informed by domestic violence, my survivalist attitude was not the person that I really am. And so Claire is the person that I really identify with and I'm coming to love. And the whole thing with cancer really brought Claire to the surface. And I had to face the agoraphobia in the middle of all that and accept that I had it.
Yes.
So I want to hear explicitly about your cancer story. And I wonder, what do you think about Amaranthia telling the story of when you received your diagnosis?
Yeah, my mom's diagnosis.
Yeah. I thought it might be interesting to hear like your memory of it.
Yeah. Well, my mom started getting sick. Well, I'm gonna go all the way back actually. In 2015, I was 15. I was already in homeschool for like a year at that time, and I was very sick already, and I was being monitored to see if I would develop Addison's disease. And it's been like that for like almost a decade now. I've been getting checked for that, and then suddenly my mom started getting really sick. Her white blood cell count was low, and then suddenly they're like, "You need to go see a specialist." and we were told that she had the chance to develop multiple myeloma, which is a rare blood cancer, for those who don't know. And it was one of the scariest times of my life because we were already dealing with the bullying and the racism in the community. And then this was like another thing that hit us. And the doctor that we had was terrible. We were dealing with microaggressions from her, and she was very cold, had terrible bedside manner. And she just told all of this to us in front of me instead of like being like, hey,
when you were 15,
she never was like, hey, can you step out of the room? I really need to talk to your mom. Or
Mm-mm.
she never tried to ease the news. She just dropped it and was like, this is what's going on. It was just no expression the whole time. Terrible experience. And so my mom was like, no, this isn't right. And somebody told her to go deeper. And
you would hear this whisper, go deeper, go deeper. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't know where it was coming from. I would hear every time I would go to the clinic, I'd hear, no, that's not it. Go deeper.
Yeah. And we were like, okay, she told me this, and okay, we're going to take charge of this. And so we got a new specialist, a new hematologist, and a lot of the things she didn't need to get tested for, like they want to do a deep, like bone marrow surgery on her. And the doctor was like, you don't need to do that yet. This is too invasive. And so she started getting checked every 3 months, then eventually every 6 months or so.
Yeah, and I thought that they wanted to do that because I was an anomaly. There not many people like me with this background from Barbados coming up with this rare disease was, we're here. So I felt like, where is this coming from? Are they trying to use me as a guinea pig? I'm going to double check this because I wasn't, I'm like, I'm going to double check this.
Yeah. So it was really jarring, but thankfully with the other doctor, he's so sweet. We still work with him. Great guy. And so from 2015 to 2019, she was getting these checks. Then the pandemic hit, and we weren't able to go to the doctor anymore. And she wasn't able to get any of her checks. We lost our health care.
Lost jobs. Almost
lost our home. And then 2021, I started noticing at the end of the year she was getting really sick, and this was after our first art show before we even created Sista Creatives Rising, called Art in Mind. And we just had a big crash after that event, and I just
December
started
2021.
She was really getting sick, and she wasn't able to eat. She was sleeping a lot. Her mom, like my grandma, died.
And I learned about that in the middle of it.
Yeah, and we were estranged from her because of the family issues. And everything's just kept getting worse. And then suddenly March 2022, at that point we started fighting to keep our house. There was all we were being threatened to be put under foreclosure. It was all kinds of stuff happening. And then we launched Sista Creatives Rising. And then literally the next day, it was March 18th, the next day on the 19th, she started losing her mobility.
Wow.
And so 6 days straight, she was just couldn't walk. And it kept getting worse and worse. She started suddenly having to use a cane. And we're freaking out because at that point we had insurance, but our insurance is terrible, and we have a deductible of $6,500 each.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I kept saying, oh, I'm going to go, I'll fix this. I'm going to just buy some weights from Amazon.
Yeah.
And I get stronger.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I'm going to buy weights.
We bought a walker, and it was just it was so bad. And our car had broken down back in 2020. We've been still trying to get it removed from the house. So we had no transportation. COVID was at an all-time high, and we're like, how are we going to get safe transportation? Because we're all immunocompromised. It was a mess.
And I was worried about being Black and immigrant in a medical system.
And this particular medical system.
Learned about the history.
Yeah, and from what we experienced before. And so emergency, the ambulance came because I woke up and my mom called me to the bathroom. She was there apparently for 3 hours. From 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. And she just was on the floor, and turned out that she wet herself and she couldn't move, and she had to get herself off the closed toilet onto the floor. And she told me, you need to call the ambulance. This is bad. And so we had the ambulance come, and she was lifted into this special chair out of the house. They could not get her out. And she was taken to the hospital, and they found that she had this massive spinal tumor, and they said it's so big that we might need to fly you out through helicopter.
Wow.
We don't have the specialist here. And then suddenly the specialist was there.
Appeared.
He wasn't supposed to be there. But he was there.
He was suddenly there by the eat.
Yeah.
He appeared next to my bed and told me,
yeah,
you know, I have to go to surgery right now. Call your family. You have to find a directive. You have 50% chance of paralysis.
And so this is all in 24 hours.
24.
And it was
less than or 24.
Probably less than 24 hours. And it was like the scariest thing I've ever experienced. And everyone kind of came at us like thinking this is myeloma. And how they were talking, they didn't say it, but how they were talking, it sounded like they thought it was terminal because it was so bad. Wow. And so we had to do all the approvals. I remember my mom calling me up and saying, we need to figure out how to do the budget for the house. And so I had to learn all the finances. I knew bits and pieces, but I had to learn how to pay bills and do all the finances for the house within like probably an hour
before
she went into surgery, because she's
before
like, I don't know.
Surgery, we were on the phone.
Yeah. I had no idea. We had no idea if she was
everything.
Yeah, we had no idea if she was coming back. It was her first surgery. Yeah. She had never been hospitalized outside of giving birth to me. She's always been healthy. And so it was just a shock. And then she went in, and I was just crying to my therapist in the middle of the surgery, just like at home, because I couldn't visit her. She didn't want me to visit because of the COVID surge. And so I'm just crying for hours. And then suddenly I get the call from the doctor saying we removed majority of the tumor and that we think it might be a sarcoma or myeloma. This is so bad. And then he said that, but her legs were moving. We're like, what? This called me and my dad. And we're like, huh? Because they said 50% chance of paralysis, and she was losing. Yeah. You know,
by the hour, was losing mobility.
By the hour. And so, okay. And then suddenly she called me 10 p.m. and said,
the recovery.
She was slurring and she's like, I'm back.
I am back. Lucky I didn't say the B word. Because it felt like a moment like that. I'm back.
That's what I'm waiting for. You can say it.
That's only you, though. I was surprised it didn't happen. But I was crying, and she was out of it, and she's like, what happened? I don't know what happened to me. I said, they said you were moving. And she's like, what happened? And so she was so confused.
5 hours, 4 transfusions, blood transfusion.
Yes, it was
lots of bleeding.
Very high risk surgery. And then the next day, she's like, okay, really, what happened? So I explained everything. And then they were helping her get up. She was getting up.
Next day,
they put her in this brace from her torso all the way to her neck. It was like a car crash brace.
You got to move because stuff is happening. You got to move right now. You got to keep moving.
And they told her, and then she relayed to us that they said, you're in the 1% to walk again.
The doctor next to my bed came and said, you're in the 1% to walk again. I have a patient down the hall, and he had the similar thing and not doing what you're doing.
His body was half paralyzed or something.
Yeah.
She had no issues. And so we're like, what is this? And then suddenly her numbers were fine.
Lemon raisin ice cream.
Yeah. You weren't supposed to.
No.
Sorry,
when did you scream?
I ordered rum and raisin ice cream.
Oh, you ordered ice cream.
In the middle of it.
And it made me sick. It made me go.
I was so mad. She wanted to eat all the time. Anyway, it's like ridiculous. But she was doing so well. The time
of my life.
You really were. You were.
Yeah.
Eating takeout. I don't know what's going on. But it was really funny. But I just was in shock. She was shocking all the doctors, and we were like, yeah, okay, what's happening here? And then we didn't hear back for 3 weeks about the diagnosis, that her numbers kept being okay. And then she got home almost a month later.
Yeah, they took me to rehab, and I had to go. I kept calling her and telling her, I'm coming home Monday. I'm coming home Friday. I kept saying I was coming home. They said, no, you're going to rehab for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I ended up in rehab.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that existed. So there's a whole new world that opened to me. And
Uh-huh.
I was in there with
Yeah.
all these white folk. I pretty much the only black person in there. And one woman kept saying, "Hello, sir. Are you from Scotland?" I was wearing this red plaid flannel, and I guess I look androgynous, and I was like, "Hello, yeah, it's okay." So like,
It's really weird. So that kept happening. And then you came home
mm-hmm.
and she was in a wheelchair, and I was like, oh my God, I held myself together, but I
couldn't get in the house.
Muscles were gone.
All my
in
muscles
her legs,
were gone.
and she couldn't get in the house. She had her brace on.
And they said, "We'll get you a ramp." I was like, "Nope."
Yeah.
No ramp.
Because you were learning how to walk, and you were like, if I can learn how to do this, I'm not going to need all this.
If I get a ramp, I'm never gonna think about walking again.
Yeah, exactly. And
they wanted to put the wheelchair in front of the TV. I said, if you put the TV in front of the TV, I'm never gonna think about walking again. I'm gonna want to sit there with my TV dinner. So no. Yeah. So the wheelchair had to stay outside in the garage. Only when I needed to go to appointments. Everything was geared towards walking again.
The motivation. Beautiful.
And what happened was that we learned finally that it wasn't myeloma, it was lymphoma, and it was a very mild non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Couldn't even stage it.
Diffuse large B-cell lymphoma was the type, and they couldn't even stage it. And she went for radiation and chemo, and suddenly, after her first chemo, she had the brace on for 8 weeks, and then she got her chemo after that. And then 6 days after chemo, she started walking, and we were like, what is going on?
I started breaking out of the brace. The brace made it that I could only look forward. I couldn't look up, down, left, or right. And I looked at it as a metaphor for my life. I could only be present and look forward. And then suddenly the brace started breaking. I'm like, started falling apart. I'm like, I need to keep this brace on. Then I went to the doctor, and he said, nope, you're done. You can take it off. So the brace my body started breaking out of the brace. It's like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
We need to get moving.
Yeah. And then she suddenly, she was using her walker more, and then all of a sudden she just stopped. She just walked away from the walker and started walking towards me. And it was like seeing a toddler walking for the first time, and we were just crying. And I have video of like that moment, and I was immediately like, I need to document all of this. And then she just kept going, and
I was on the bed, sitting on the bed, and something said to me, that voice, like that whisper, I hear this, walk from the bed over there without the walker. You can do it. And I was like, huh? So I said, okay. And I got up and I took baby steps and I walked.
You kind of like bed. Waddled.
Me.
Yeah.
And I yelled for Amaranthia. I'm like, oh my God, I'm walking.
Wow. Yeah. And so it was
How many years ago was that?
Last year.
That was just a year.
That happened between March. All that happened between March and October last year.
Yeah.
And then I came into remission in October.
She took those first steps without assistance in May.
And the brace came off. That was 2 months after.
Yeah. So she had the diagnosis, everything happened in March, and then 2 months later she was starting to walk. And that was supposed to be near impossible. So she wasn't supposed to be able to walk for months. But she started doing it 2 months later. And now when she went into remission in October, she was pretty much walking just with the cane. And now she still uses the cane when she goes out, but pretty much at home, she walks without it. But if she walks very long distances, she has to have the cane. But it's like none of this was supposed to happen from the doctor's perspective. It was all it's like a miracle. Seriously.
Yeah, that people, nurses and stuff would come to me and say, oh my goodness, I've never seen anything like this. There was one nurse that said, I told her I was going to be walking by the end of summer, and she was like, don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I am. And I did walk by the end of the summer because I don't know, I just was like, you know what? If I don't have all my family's gone, I'm the only one that's left, my nuclear family. I have Amaranthia, and my husband, they're the only in the world. I don't want to be a burden on anybody. Not that I would be a burden, but I just wanted to be able to make my own way in the world.
Yeah.
On my terms.
On your 2 feet.
Yeah, on my 2 feet. So that's what I did. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Amaranthia, I'm curious to hear your experience of being a daughter and also a caretaker in these past few years, and how that, just how that shows up in your relationship as mother-daughter.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's very interesting because she's been my caretaker because of my disability. Especially I was just dismissed from my endocrinologist like probably 2 months ago after like 10 years of going to see her.
And they couldn't believe after the year you went through that
that my numbers were actually improving. So it was very strange, but it's interesting because she's been my caretaker with these adrenal issues that I was experiencing and my invisible disabilities. And then when she got sick, it was strange because 3 weeks before she went to the hospital, we both got diagnosed with agoraphobia and complex PTSD and panic disorder. And suddenly when she went to the hospital, it helped you come to terms. You're like, okay, now I know the names of what I'm experiencing. So now I know what the signs are and how to handle it
it got me through the whole experience.
Right.
Knowing this diagnosis.
Right.
When the anxieties and the fears came up, it was like, oh, that's where that's coming from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it was the same with me. So when she went in, I was in the middle of trying to figure out with my therapist, okay, how am I supposed to face my agoraphobia? What do I do? And then when she went into the hospital, it forced me to face that. And I'm still obviously struggling with it. I still don't go out a lot because of COVID.
She took me to appointment.
Yeah, and because of,
she got out of that.
All this other stuff. But it made me realize I have the power within myself to handle this. I'm going to be okay. And I just kept telling myself it's going to be okay. And something was just telling me, like, your mom's going to be fine. I didn't know how it was going to be fine, but it was going to be fine. And obviously things kept being proven to me over and over again. So I just decided that when she was going into surgery, I told her, no matter what happens, I'm going to take care of you. I don't care if you're in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, you're paralyzed, if you're partially paralyzed, whatever, I'm going to take care of you. And I was prepared for that. And and when she came out and then she had this miracle happen, I was like, okay, I'm going into full, caretaker mode. And I just decided that I just started cooking for all the time. I was on top of her medicine. I was, we have a hydroponic garden. So I was just constantly like making fresh green drinks for her. And I was just on top of everything. And I'm, now it's more like equal. Yeah. Now we're like, okay.
Now I'm back to taking care of you, helping you with your routine, and she's helping me. We're doing it together again.
But during that time with chemo and radiation, everything, and the amount of hospitalization she had, and she had an infection that was bad, it was pneumonia.
Yeah.
And I had to like do
back into surgery again.
Yeah. I had to do so much with her diet and help her wash up and stuff. It was a lot.
Couldn't go to the bathroom upstairs.
But
everything.
I just felt like, our relationship has always been close. I've always been able to tell her everything and anything. Yeah. I was always able to confide in her, and it was always like, you wouldn't be able to.
We're friends, we're sisters, we're mother and daughter.
Exactly. You never were like
all of it. We're soulmates.
We're not afraid to tell each other if we're like upset or like we get in fights and things like that. But
at 15, when I was being like so self-sabotaging and would be doing all these dysfunctional things that would cause me self-harm, she said, "You better get it together. I'm tired of this. I'm tired. You've helped me to get to here. What are you doing?" And she would yell me and like shake at me, and I was like, okay. And she made me stand up. She does that.
Yeah.
She's
Wait,
a
how
tough
old were
person.
you when you were
15.
doing
She
that?
she's like, I'm not taking that.
I've been doing that, but
Yeah.
I mean, especially at
Yeah.
15,
Yeah, 15.
I
She
was
just
like,
told me
no,
to, and I remember that.
get it together.
Get
And you
your
could
act
hear it.
together.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's really special for
I
a
could
mom
hear
to
it.
be
I
able
could hear it. Yeah.
to hear the, because I mean, a lot of 15-year-olds do
I
that or yell
know.
at their parents, but then, like, often they're punished for it, and there's not room to actually hear the message that they might be trying to send.
I'll tell you why. Because in Buddhism, in our practice of Buddhism, we believe that we choose our parents and our children choose us. It's back, we choose the life that we come into. So I knew that I chose Amaranthia and she chose me. She's not just, she's not some object in my life that I talk down to,
Not under you. Like,
or
I'm
she's
not.
not under me. She is a being just like me. She is, at times, she is my teacher. At times, I'm her teacher. It goes back and forth. It's not a relationship that is like have all these hierarchies and stuff like this. It's very fluid. It's very organic, and we have unconditional love for each other. And we know that we were meant to be here together at this moment, because I would not have been here. When people ask me, are you going to have another child? I would say, no, my first and my last. She's my first and my last.
Yeah.
And I never thought I could be a good mother, because I was really afraid that I would visit the violence of my life on her. And in the early days, I would spank her. And then it came to a point when I realized I cannot spank my child, because it can go over to violence because of where I come from. So I had to talk to myself about that. And so there are a lot of things that I had to, if it wasn't for this child, this person, this being, my friend, my soulmate, my sister, if I didn't have this energy in my life, I would not be here. I could say my daughter saved my life. She really has, because I grew up. I became an adult as her mother. And it's just I just look at life differently. I just don't look at it like, oh, I'm her mom, and it's never been that.
That's why it was so natural when she got sick. I was like, of course I'm going to do this. Like, there was no hesitation.
Yeah, her friends used to always say, can we move over to your house?
Yeah.
I want your mother. That's cool.
She would help them talk to their parents. They would be like, can I tell you what happened to me? This bad thing happened to me. And she would be like, okay, well, we need to work this out, because I still need to tell your parents. And they would be like, okay, well, you help me tell my mom. And it was just really like,
they wanted to move in with me, because like, how could you have a mom like this? It's just always been this way.
Yeah, I'm so grateful.
Claire, I know you mentioned in someone else's podcast that healing your intergenerational trauma is one of the focuses of your life.
Yeah.
And as Claire's daughter, Amaranthia, I'm curious to hear, I don't know, just how that shows up for you, or what, like, we have two generations here, like what demons are you working with, or what's your generation of that story like?
I think that, I think like you were talking about the self-sabotage.
Yes, my self-sabotage.
I think that's
the demon that followed me a lot.
I think that influenced me because it was something you were dealing with a lot. And it comes here and there, but it's improved so much. But I think I call them, sometimes
they have guerrilla tactics. I don't even realize. Like when I was in the hospital, I was like, I called them my toxic friends, and I gave them that name. And I told them, look, you can't come here with me. No, I can't have you interrupting my healing. So I was like, no, I only thought positive thoughts. And, they still do guerrilla tactics to try to come at me. And because I've gotten so good at identifying them now, that they'll come do these little guerrilla warfare things on me that I don't even see it coming. And then I've messed up. And then I'm like, oh man, they caught me that time, but I'm a lot better.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And I feel like I've dealt with that a bit, not at the level you were experiencing, but my main issue was being a perfectionist growing up, and a lot of that stemmed from the racism I was experiencing. I was always kind of treated like by teachers and sometimes other students I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough, and so I had to really go above and beyond to get my grades up and get extra credit and things like that to be able to get through and prove that I'm worthy of being in this space. Because there's this, it's just pushed on you from so young that Black kids can't be smart. They can't be at the same, they can't be good students. And they're always taught, kind of treated like you're a nuisance, that you're unworthy of being in this space. And I was pushing against that from so young after coming back to America. And so my parents, especially my mom was like, you need to prove to them that you're worthy of being here. And that put a lot of pressure on me because you're dealing with that as a 5 or 6 year old, when you have that on you already and you're being, mistreated constantly by teachers and you're seeing them be nice to everyone else but you, even though you're a good student and you're getting your assignments in, top of my class, I'm still being treated like crap. That was a constant factor in me kind of being a perfectionist. And so once I started going to therapy and I started kind of breaking down why I was doing that, so I was like, it's a form of intergenerational trauma because you're just fighting to be seen as human. And so that's been very traumatizing, and it's been hard I had to learn to recognize that when I'm in a space where I have to justify that I'm a human being and that I'm a Black woman and I'm proud to be a Black woman, and I have to fight to be recognized as that, then they don't deserve my energy or my time. And it took me a long time to figure that out because I would go into these spaces thinking that I have to prove myself. No, I don't. I don't need to. I don't need to be perfect, and it's okay to ask for help as well, because part of that perfection thing was feeling like I have to do everything myself because I have to prove that I can. And I feel like the work I'm doing, Sista Creatives Rising, we have a team of like, oh my gosh, it's like 12 people. I think, I don't know.
Wow.
It's a lot of different people we're working with. And some people haven't come in yet because they come in a bit later, but I think it's about 12 to 15. And I'm working with other artists on our team to help me get things done. And it's helped me realize like, it's okay if I can't get something done myself. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to have other people get this done on my behalf. And we've been just have amazing collaborators on this project, and I just have realized like, wow, I don't have to go it alone anymore. I always had my mom to help me, but it's just having other people who get it, who understand I have these disabilities, and realizing also it's important to rest. That I don't need to
and breathe
and get rid of that stereotype in my head that, I'm being lazy. If I'm resting for myself, I'm not being lazy. I have a disability. And I have to recover. And so I have to recuperate, and it's okay for other people to take care of things while I'm recuperating. And being able to work with people who get that, who understand that, it's been a blessing. But it's been a lot of breaking down those mindsets and having to overexert to prove myself. I'm just feel like now I'm 23, soon turning 24. I'm getting to that point, and I don't know, I'm just really grateful.
And as the mom looking at this, coming from where I came from, I'm like, wow, I brought this person into the world.
You helped me do that.
I helped her do this. Do you know what that does to me as a person from my background, where I didn't have, I was told I was nothing, I was going nowhere fast, and and had to fight my way to get to this couch to be here. And I'm still fighting today. I had to fight through cancer, all this stuff. And I have this young woman, this energy, this spirit saying to you all that stuff she just said. And to know that I had a part in that, what that does to me and to my life and to my life force. That is the highest that you can go, as I feel, as a parent,
Yeah.
To see that you give that to your child. And if I felt like when I was in the hospital, I felt like if I had to leave the world and this was my last time going into that surgery, that I knew that I had given my child this. I knew that she would be okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So pretty much.
Yeah.
You just like totally rearranged my understanding of intergenerational trauma because I'm watching the way that it's a two-way street or the way that it's cyclical.
Yeah.
I think the image in my head was like this sort of descending line where one generation comes after the other, and even maybe it's supposed to be like a steady improvement where every generation gets to heal a little bit more or something in this linear way, which is of course not really how it works. But I was like, duh. But just hearing the way you're talking about how you've touched each other and the way it's kind of flowing maybe back into your ancestral line in the same way that it's flowing down into descendants and maybe even onto any family you might have, Amaranthia. So beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I feel like I'm learning that myself because I felt like it was linear as well. And I'm like, now that you said that, it's true.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of a back and forth.
Yeah, I had to learn a lot, and I had to like come to a place of peace with a lot of things. I just did the presentation, and one of the questions they asked me was like, "What books are you reading?" or "What books are you reading?" And I was like, "Really? At this time, I haven't been able to break a book. I tried to break Michelle Obama's book, and I don't have the. I'm all over the place. I'm like, there's so many things I want to do, and I find that the only place that I can rest is when I read an article. It's just to the point. I go and find articles and I research, and that's easier for me. But I haven't been able to break a book, and I was like, how are you a writer and you haven't been able to break a book? And I realized something. As a writer, you don't only learn from reading, but reading is also listening, right? When you listen, and sometimes I'm only able to listen to something, and I get myself that space because at first I was like, no, I'm not a writer. You're not reading right now the books that you need to read, and I had to. So I've taught her that don't be hard on yourself. Like I had to learn for myself not to be hard on myself. And in cancer, that was one of the biggest lessons. Not to be hard on myself. And I was writing in cancer, but I wasn't physically writing. I was writing in my head, and I'd write notes down on napkins. And I realized there's more than one way to do something and to be something. That's what that whole thing that you described is about. It's more than one way. It doesn't flow from top to bottom, and it goes all over the place. It zigzags. It's through. It's under. It's above.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about some upcoming Sista Creatives Rising events?
Yeah. So, well, I guess we have two things. You just did your Boston Public Library presentation.
Yeah, and that's we're going to put that out by Friday, the full thing.
Yeah,
and that went really well. We were really surprised. Like 20-something people came out for my first talk, and we got testimonials from that. And people were like, wow, we learned how to do things in a different way. Wow, I didn't think about things that way. So that's about to come out. And then
that's called it's a virtual talk called the 50% chance of paralysis, how I utilize journaling as self-reflection during cancer treatment. And so that was at Boston Public Library, and it's going to be fully captioned for accessibility purposes. So we have that coming, and then we have our main event, which is our Art in Mind series that I was talking a bit about previously, and it's virtual art show series, and like a film event and a fundraiser. And our first show was in 2021, and it was called Reflections of Women and Femmes in Our Mental Health During COVID. And we've had our major focus is talking about disability and disability accessibility. And we grab these artists and pull their stories together. We make these videos and we compile it into a documentary. And we use it to raise awareness about the healing power of art and other social issues. And so this year it's called I Know Who I Am, Journeys of Women of Color and Femme Expressing Creatives. And it's all women and femmes of color. And we the show is actually called I Know Who I Am because it's based off of my anti-bullying project. And so I wanted to be able to close that out because I had, you know who I am, I'm proud of who I am. And then we have I Know Who I Am because I wasn't able to close that project out properly because of my health issues and because of the experiences I was having with racism and not being able to fully tell my story as I was doing that art tour. So with this show, I found a way to kind of reclaim my story. And I wanted to hear from other artists who were reclaiming theirs and showing how art has helped them in so many different ways. And so we have 5 artists: Sadhguru Sounds, who's a Nicaraguan musician. We have Diana Hernandez, who's a Puerto Rican multimedia artist. And then we have Tanisha Skyers, who's Black
Caribbean,
Jamaican Canadian, a self-taught painter. And then we have Heisi, who is a Chinese immigrant who is amazing animator. Does claymation and I think 2D animation. And then we have the lady Miss Vagina Jenkins, who's an activist and neurodivergent activist and agender femme, who's doing amazing activist work with her paintings and stuff. And so we're going to pull all those stories together in the documentary. And then we have my mom's documentary, which is her presentation with the Boston Public Library. We're kind of bits and pieces of that. And it's called a 50% chance of paralysis, get ahead of life before life gets ahead of you.
Call to action.
Yeah, it's her call to action, get ahead of life before life gets ahead of you. And it's telling her story and all the videos. And I've documented with her journey and some performance pieces she does with spoken word. And we have original music from a composer we're working with named Mel Giuliani, who's disabled activist from Australia. So it's really big undertaking. We've been working on it since November. The show is October 5th from 6:30 to 8:30.
And we are doing fundraising for
we're doing a fundraiser with it. It's called the Sisters Uprising Fund. It's a new concept and basically
it goes back to when I wanted to help my mom.
Yeah, exactly. It was based off of that, and 100% of funds will go into becoming grants. For this year, it'll be for BIPOC artists, so Black Indigenous, women of color, and femmes of color who are creatives of any kind. And our goal is to reach $1,000 and be able to distribute 200 to 5 artists, because with our sponsors, Brain Arts, Org, and Dancing Queerly Boston, we've been able to pay our team. We've been able to pay the artists $200 each for being in the documentary. So we're hoping to do that again with the fundraiser.
Yeah, along the way, we realized how these creatives can have difficulty as they struggle to create. And if we can help a little bit, it's not a lot, but if we can help by giving them, a little something,
Yeah.
Sista Creatives, Sista Uprising Fund.
Yeah. So like the tickets are supposed to come out August 31st. It's free. And then you just choose if you want to donate or not. And then it's on Zoom, October 5th. So
we're working on that now.
Yeah.
Great.
Marketing coming out soon.
We'll send both those things around in the show notes and the newsletter for this episode.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. We'll have everything soon.
Yeah, and you can sign up for the newsletter at SistaCreatives.com.
Yeah, we have a newsletter that people can
give you the information.
And we have an event page as well. So, but yeah.
Great.
Yeah. We're busy from our couch every day, virtually.
Yeah. Oh, and we also have Black therapists and activists who are going to be speaking.
That's right.
With a focus on COVID and disability and mental health, and they'll be giving free advice.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Cool.
Yeah, because we always try to give information and free resources and root our what we're doing in facts and stats,
and science. Yeah. So it's really excited. I'm so excited for it to be coming together finally. But
Great. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we continue healing, working upward, climbing upward.
Yep, exactly.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave a review in your podcast app. Cancer Talks is a platform for anyone who has been touched by cancer. Write to us at info@cancertalks.com if you have a story to share. If you're moved to donate, please visit cancertalks.com/donate.